Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Porter. I'm president of Stress Stop. And oops, uh, let me get the slide right. So I've been writing about and talking about and teaching people how to manage stress now for over 35 years. I'm still learning a lot myself about it. It's nothing like raising a family to test your ability to manage stress. But all my kids have flown the coop. I've got three of them, but I really think that learning how to manage stress is a a never-ending pursuit. There's more to learn. I think that's why I like it so much. Anyway, you're looking at a picture of my most recent book called Maximizing Mindfulness. I've also written a book called Stop Stress This Minute. And uh, we're going to talk about mindfulness today. And a lot of this is based on the book that I wrote. I've been studying mindfulness now for about 20 years, and it's really something that has meant a lot to me in terms of how well I'm able to manage stress. And I think you'll understand that as we move along through the program. So let's get started. So over the course of the next half hour or so, we're going to give you some background about mindfulness. We're going to define what mindfulness is. We're going to talk about the medical benefits of mindfulness. We're going to talk about the difference between formal and informal mindfulness practice. That's really something that wound up being very important in the training that I've taken, is understanding that you can practice. Sometimes they're referred to as everyday mindfulness practice, and that would be the informal mindfulness practice. And you can just do it all the time. That's one of the key concepts of mindfulness that we'll talk about when we get to that point. And then finally, as Danica mentioned, we'll have a little interactive activities at the end. We'll definitely have some chance for you to try meditating. So let me forward this. So as I was preparing this slideshow, I was looking for pictures in my Adobe stock photo library, and they have probably 100,000 different pictures. I'm surprised by how hard it was to come up with pictures that to me really represent what mindfulness is, because this certainly doesn't. It's not about cloud gazing. It's not about positive thinking. It's absolutely not about cooking bacon and eggs. It's maybe spending time in nature. It's not about exercise. So it just kind of surprised me that this is what the world thinks that mindfulness is about, but it's not what I think it's about. Another thing I noticed when I was searching through pictures, if I searched on mindfulness at work, I came up with hundreds of pictures of people meditating on their desk with their thumb and fingers in this mudra position. And I've been meditating now for 20 years, and I don't know, I've probably spent 10 minutes with my thumb and fingers like that. I know why people do that, but it's not something that I've really seen that often in all the times I've gone on meditation retreats. And so it just strikes me as, people just don't understand mindfulness. It puts, this guy looks, who meditates sitting on a desk with their shoes off? It's ridiculous. So I hate the fact that it's like a cliche almost, and I think it puts up a kind of a roadblock between if you've never really been exposed to this subject, and this is what you see as illustrating it, it's going to put you off. That's kind of how I feel. So I did like this little stock photo. Energy flows where attention goes, and I think one of the problems that mindfulness addresses is the fact that our attention is spread out all over the place. We've got distractions galore. We're multitasking all the time. And this isn't a good way to stay in the present moment, to pay attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. So to me, this is what mindfulness is all about. It's about attention. It's about focus. It's about productivity, really, because when you're able to attend to what it is you're doing while you're doing it, you're going to be able to produce more. You're not going to be bothered by little distractions and whatnot. So that's what mindfulness is about to me. So let's define what mindfulness is. It's a translation of the word sati, and it usually gets translated as awareness, attention, remembering. One of my mindfulness teachers like to say it was remembering to remember. And that gets us into this whole subject of meta awareness. I don't know if you've noticed, but Facebook renamed themselves Meta. It's a kind of a big term, a small word for a big idea, really, that is all about just kind of looking in and being aware of your awareness. So another definition of mindfulness is moment by moment awareness, paying attention on purpose. I already said that. It definitely includes non-judgment. So here are three definitions that I like, one being mine. The first one is Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition. Jon Kabat-Zinn, we'll talk about him a bit. I went on a 6-day retreat with him up in upstate New York, and he's pretty much, I think the whole world, or at least this part of the world, the Western world, gives him credit for bringing mindfulness into the West. 30 years ago, he started the very first mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the upcoming slide. So his definition is non-judgmental awareness. He's got longer definitions, but that's a good short and to the point. My definition is paying attention to what you are doing while you're doing it. So that's my definition. If you've ever heard of Eckhart Tolle, he wrote the massive best-selling book about mindfulness, really, even though he doesn't like the word mindfulness. That's what it's about. It's called The Power of Now. And I've read that book 11 times. So 9 of them were on a tape in the car or some sort of CD or something. But he likes the word presence because he says we're not trying to, mindful implies that the mind is full and we're really trying to kind of empty it out with a mindfulness practice. So let's talk about some of the benefits of mindfulness so you can kind of get on board with this. This is a picture of Jon Kabat-Zinn. You can find his lectures all over the internet. And there's even some, there's, all these, he's got a program that you can sign up for and pay for, but you don't need to do that. There's plenty of programs. He's at Google, he's at Dartmouth. There's a really good program where he talks for about an hour at Dartmouth. He's really, really brilliant and definitely worth checking out on the internet. So he started the Center for Mindfulness outside of Boston at the Massachusetts Medical Center. He calls his program Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR. And this was really the first standardized program that could be studied and the results could be measured. And we'll understand that a little bit better in the next slide. And now this mindfulness program is taught in over 700 hospitals and lots of corporations like Google, Apple, and Green Mountain Coffee. So those are just a few. His programming is all over the place. So the research that he's been able to do, and typically this involves, having a control group that goes through the mindfulness class or that would actually be the control group is the group that doesn't take the mindfulness class. So 50 people take a mindfulness class, 50 people are on a waiting list. And they gave, in one example, they gave everybody a flu shot at the end of the first group's class. So what you had were 50 people who didn't take the class, but were wanting to take it, and 50 people who did take the class. And those 50 people who had taken the mindfulness class had a much stronger immune system reaction to that flu shot. And as we all know from the pandemic flu shots that you may have gotten, having a strong reaction is what you want. And so it was interesting that the 50 people who had taken the mindfulness class had this stronger immune system reaction. So that's how we know that mindfulness lowers anxiety, alleviates depression, reduces anger episodes, alleviates chronic pain. There's been a lot of research around that. It helps people with eating disorders. There's a whole branch of mindfulness for people with eating disorders. It helps, as I mentioned, helps people boost their immune system. And I even saw a study about it helping cancer patients cope with their treatment better. And if you, plug a mindfulness and whatever it is you want to know about chronic pain, let's say, into Google, you'll see plenty of research about stuff like that. So in addition to the work that Jon Kabat-Zinn's been able to kind of initiate, I think he's done it with the help of Richard Davidson, who really is a scientist in a research institution, University of Wisconsin at Madison, where he has in his lab, they have an MRI machine, and they put meditators into this MRI machine, and they get them to come there from all around the world. They've had a lot of Tibetan monks come, who are the kind of the world-class athletes of meditation, having meditated typically 10,000 hours or more. And if you've ever read any of Malcolm Gladwell's work, you know that that's that 10,000 hour mark is what sort of separates the pros from the amateurs in terms of anything, whether it's playing violin or meditating. So he's put these people who have meditated, all their lives into this cigar-shaped tube, and it's noisy as all get out, and asked them to meditate while they're in there. And what he's found is, he asked them to meditate for 90 seconds on, 90 seconds off. And he said, this is Richard Davidson talking. He said, when they start to meditate, he said, the images that I'm seeing, on my screen are as different as night and day. And you can see the areas of the brain that are activated during meditation. And there's been a lot of great research that's come out of it. And now we have over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies. These are studies that have been published in medical journals around the benefits of mindfulness. And I've pretty much quoted a bunch of those studies in that slide where I talked about the benefits. Now, one of the benefits that I really find, the most, like the best benefit, I guess, is illustrated in this slide, where we talk about state changes versus trait changes. Now, state changes, I think, are the reasons why people want to practice mindfulness meditation. They're hoping that they're going to feel relaxed afterwards, maybe even blissful, happy, at ease. Some people say one with the world, and that's not as airy-fairy as it sounds. If we had an hour today, I would go into that a little bit more. But you really are trying, when you empty out the mind, when you detach yourself from the thinking mind, you really can connect with the world around you in a way that you can't when you're thinking, because that thinking mind kind of separates you. And I'll give you a great example. Is go to a party where you don't know anybody. You're all up in the thinking mind. You're just so, disconnected from the people around you. You're saying to yourself, I don't know anybody. And that's being kind of, fixated on the thinking mind. And mindfulness is, as I mentioned with the remark about Eckhart Tolle, it's letting go of the thinking mind. It's developing an awareness below the level of thinking. So you have the mind up here, you have this is the thinking mind, right? And then you have this awareness that can watch the thinking mind. And when you do this, when you develop a mindfulness practice, you are going to experience trait changes. These are the physical structural changes that take place in the brain as the result of having just even as little as an 8-week meditation practice in place. And this is the research that's been done by Sarah Lazar. I interviewed her for a podcast. She's really an interesting person. She's a professor at Harvard and has also put people into MRI machines. And she's seen that there's an increase in gray matter in the prefrontal cortex in the brains of people who have been meditating for at least 8 weeks. They can see this increase. Now, the prefrontal cortex is considered to be the executive center of the brain. And that's the part of the brain that takes control over the emotional brain, which lies just beneath. So you really want to have that extra kind of strength in the prefrontal cortex. That's the purple section, by the way, in this picture. There's an increase in gray matter in the hippocampus, and you can see that looks like a kind of a flesh-colored sock in the middle of that brain. And that's the part of the brain that's responsible for learning and memory. And guess what? If you're seeing an increase in the gray matter there, that's going to help you with the aging process, because Alzheimer's disease decimates the hippocampus. So think about that. So I used to say, as I was a kid, put that in your pipe and smoke it. And then there's a decrease in gray matter in the amygdala, which it looks like the little football or kidney-sized bean there that the hippocampus is maybe kicking. with the toes of its foot. That's the amygdala. Now the amygdala, why would we want to decrease in gray matter? Well, that's where the stress response originates. So we don't, the more stress we experience, the bigger it gets. So if we can decrease the size of that, that's a really good thing. All right, so let's talk about the difference between mindlessness and mindfulness, really one of my favorite topics. I think the reason I like to talk about it is I think it helps people understand mindfulness. I mean, when you first talk about mindfulness, usually the subject of being in the present moment comes up, and what's so important about that? Why would people be interested in that? So I like to come at mindfulness through the back door and talk about its opposite. So some of the things we do mindfulness, I think people can relate to, whereas I think it's harder to relate to, why do I need to be in the present moment? But I think we can relate to the fact that we do so many things without thinking about it. You can drive a car. The other like a month ago, I was headed over to the Sherwin-Williams paint store, which is right across the street from the Stop and Shop grocery store that I go to once a week, whereas I never go to the Sherwin-Williams paint store. And guess what? I ended up in the parking lot of the Stop and Shop. I get out of the car and I say, wait, I'm not going here. I'm going across the street. So you can drive a car without even thinking about it. You can, and I know everybody's experienced this one. You park the car at the mall. You get out 2 hours later, you have no idea where you parked it. Well, what were you doing? Where were you when you parked the car? You weren't there. Your mind was somewhere else. You were lost in your thinking mind. Maybe you've experienced this where you're upstairs in your bedroom or wherever, and you need a pair of scissors from the kitchen. But by the time you get there, you have no idea why you're standing there. So this is a pretty common thing, this mindlessness. And you can kind of start to see or get a hint at one of the really key benefits of mindfulness are making less mistakes, getting in less accidents, because we can do any repetitive task mindlessly, whether it's ironing, mowing the lawn, filing, or crossing the street. So if you've ever had an accident mowing the lawn or put a piece of paper in a wrong file and you never find it again, now you start to see there really are some very tangible benefits to mindfulness. So I often talk about the first time I encountered mindfulness. It was a story that was written by Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese monk. He left Vietnam right at the end of the Vietnam War, when everybody was leaving Vietnam, and he never went back. And he wrote over 30 books on mindfulness. And one of the books he wrote, I first read 25 years ago, and it was one of the stories that kind of, believe it or not, turned me off to mindfulness for a long time, was his idea of how you needed to be in the present moment while you were doing the dishes. And his concept was, you needed to listen to the sound of the running water and the sink and hear and feel the hot water on the back of your hand, smell the soap as it wafts up into your nose. And I thought at the time, why would anybody do that over, just thinking about the trip you just took to Florida? So I put that out to you. Maybe we can open up the chat, and some of you could kind of think about, well, why would you want to think about doing the dishes while you were doing the dishes rather than something a little more entertaining than that? Anybody? I don't know how many people we have on Danica, but somebody wants to say, turn on their mic and say why they want to think about doing the dishes, I'd be happy to hear it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments in the chat.
Okay. What are you seeing in the chat? I don't see the chat.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could see it.
I think I just didn't open it up. Show chat.
Yeah, appreciate the simple moments in life and be grateful for the ability to do so. Yeah, making sure that the dishes actually get clean.
Yep.
Practice being present, practice being mindful.
Great. Yeah, I can see him now. All right, so my favorite answer, but not the answer I'm looking for, is absolutely getting the dishes clean. And that goes back to what I said. When you do things mindfully, you make less mistakes, you're going to be more efficient. So there's more benefits meet the eye to this business of mindfulness. But the answer that I am really kind of talking about is, in this situation, think about where your mind goes when you're doing the dishes. Does it go to a happy place, or does it go to a problem? You know, typically when we're doing things mindlessly, like we can when we do the dishes, we start to think about the argument that you had with your spouse, or the bill that you have to pay in a couple of weeks that you're not sure you're going to have the money to pay. So your mind goes to a place that isn't exactly a happy place. We tend to either go forward in time and think about something that makes us anxious, or we go back in time and think about something that's already happened and can't possibly be changed, and we're thinking about something that makes us angry. So the classic place that we do this the most is in the shower. I don't know about you, but a couple of weeks ago, I was in the shower, maybe 5-10 minutes, and my hair was wet, but I had no idea whether I shampooed it or not. So it's like, where was I? Well, I was thinking about a dentist appointment that I had. And I was wondering if I have a cavity, or maybe worse, a root canal. Maybe I have to get a root canal. Now, I've never had a root canal, but I'm thinking about, in the shower, getting a root canal. What would that be like? Well, it couldn't be not good, right? It'd have to be terrible. And so now, where I could be thoroughly enjoying myself, I am somewhere else. My body's in the shower, but my mind is in the dentist chair getting a root canal. Now, my heart rate's going up, my blood pressure's going up, my muscle tension is increasing. Not a lot, but a little bit, when I could be totally relaxed. And that really brings us thoroughly around to this notion of how we can practice everyday mindfulness, because the only moment you can ever experience is this moment right here and right now. So if you're somewhere else when you're in the shower and you have the opportunity to just, have a good time in the shower, but instead you're going off in the future where you get anxious, or back into the past where you tend to get angry. So that is the part that I wanted to say. So informal mindfulness practice, by the way, it can include time that you spend, walking outside. It could be time that you spend eating, where you actually focus on savoring every bite. It could be time that you spend listening, like when you really cue into what somebody's saying and listen more than you speak. You will be doing that mindfully. And all of those minutes that you spend doing that are times where you're going to be a little less out of the thinking mind and more into the kind of feeling aspect of life. So that's really important. So I want to spend like the last 5 or 10 minutes here doing some mindfulness meditation. So I'm thinking about, let's see, one good way to start a meditation is to just take a few deep breaths. So why don't we do that right now? Just take a deep breath in through your nose and breathe out through your partially closed mouth. Breathe in through the nose and breathe out through your partially closed mouth. That's a good way to kind of get yourself centered for a mindfulness practice. Now, the classic mindfulness meditation, and mindfulness meditation is different from transcendental meditation, where you're focusing on a mantra or a word or phrase that you repeat silently to yourself. We're just really trying to bring ourselves into the present moment by noticing something around us that kind of represents the present moment. So there's no better way to bring yourself into the present moment than a breath awareness exercise. So I'm going to narrate one for you, and we'll do that for a couple of minutes, and you can just kind of you will, at the end of this 2 minutes, you will know how to do mindfulness meditation. So what we're going to do is, just sit comfortably in a chair. We're not doing deep breathing. We're just noticing every breath. We're becoming aware of our breath. The breath is a pretty interesting phenomenon. We can take conscious control over our breath, or our body will just breathe itself. So most of the time, and we take 15,000 breaths in a single day, 24 hours. So most of the time, all that's happening on autopilot, but we can take over. If you dive underwater, you can hold your breath for a long time. So that's one of the aspects of being able, whereas everything else just happens kind of automatically, heartbeat, blood pressure, but breath we can control. All right, so I want you to notice every in-breath, every out-breath, and then notice the gap between the in-breath and the out-breath. So let's just start that. Maybe you want to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm just going to guide us through just a couple of minutes of a mindfulness breath awareness exercise. So breathing in through the nose and out through your partially closed mouth. Breathing in through the nose and out through your partially closed mouth. One more time, breathing in through the nose and out through your partially closed mouth. So now we're just going to notice our breathing. Nothing changes here, nothing different. Just notice every in-breath. So we're breathing in. And of course, we would hold it for a little while, not too long. Then we would breathe out. And then there's always a gap between our out breath and the next in breath. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but you can play with that gap. The point is you want to notice it. So let's breathe in, breathe out, and notice the gap. So if it's got a short gap, that's fine, but that's where your mind tends to wander, is in that gap. So breathing in, breathing out, and notice the gap. Breathing in, breathing out, and notice the gap. Breathing in, breathing out, and notice the gap. So continue now on your own, breathing in, breathing out, and noticing the gap. And if your mind wanders, that's okay, no problem. Just bring it back to noticing the in-breath, noticing the out-breath, and notice the gap. So whenever you're ready, open your eyes, and maybe people want to comment in the chat. If you're feeling more relaxed, say yes. If that was difficult and not easy to do, maybe even made you less relaxed, say no. So yes for, you're feeling more relaxed, and no for, we got some chat action going on here. Let's see what we got. Oh, good, good. So what you did, if you said yes, is you self-regulated your nervous system. And if you think about it, we all have anxious moments, stressful moments throughout the day, and we couldn't have done that for more than, say, 3 or 4 minutes. Really doesn't take that long to take control of a situation um, where you're feeling anxious or stressed to bring it back. Danica said I could run a little bit over. We were planning to do this for a half an hour. I'm sort of thinking that if we take another 5 minutes, we could do another meditation, and then I can kind of wrap it up. So if that's all right with everybody, I'll just keep going. So the other classic mindfulness meditation is a sometimes called a sonic meditation, where we're just noticing the sounds in the room. And so if you think about it, I mean, there's nothing to it, right? It's just all you're doing is closing your eyes and just zeroing in on the sounds in the room. So let's start that up. On the day that we practiced this with John Kabat-Zinn, he came into the room. There were 30 of us in the room, and he opened up all the windows so we could hear. We were in a kind of a remote area in the woods, and you could hear the brook that was outside the window, and you could hear the wind, and maybe there were some birds that we could hear. So that's a really great way to do that. If you're ever walking through the woods, you come to a gurgling brook or something like that. Really, really lovely thing to do. But for now, you can still do it in an office, because there's stuff to listen to. So let's just, if you feel comfortable doing so, not everybody does, close your eyes, and let's just tune into the noises around you. So for me, I hear a ticking clock, and I can hear the computer. I can hear my breath. What are you hearing? You don't have to tell me, but just focus in on what are you hearing. Now, there may be sounds, people talking in another room. That's okay. Just let it. Just remember, non-judgment is part of the aspect of this. So you don't want to judge yourself for maybe not doing this well, and you don't want to judge others for doing what they do naturally, which might be talking or moving around in another room, or you might hear, you might hear things far away that are making noise. So just let your ears kind of relax into the sounds around you. So whenever you're ready, open your eyes, and maybe some of you experienced mind wandering. If you did, and maybe more so with this exercise, since I wasn't really guiding you, if you did, just type yes into the chat, because mind wandering is one of the biggest reasons why people give up meditation before they really even get started, because they say, I'm no good at this. My mind wandered 10 times while I was trying to meditate. And one of the things that John Kabat-Zinn taught us on that retreat was the minute you realize your mind has wandered, you're back in the present moment. And that was really important for me to at least learn, because I wasn't really sure, am I in the present moment? Am I not? Well, what happens typically with mind wandering is all of a sudden you're experiencing this kind of movie. And usually it's starring you, and you're in it and you're lost. You're really not in the present moment at all. But if during meditation you can become aware that we all have this tendency, you're not alone in the fact that your mind is wandered. So I want to go on to the next slide. Let me just pull down the chat and see what we've got there. So yeah, it sounds like people's mind did wander. Some people were willing to say that. So let me get rid of that. And let me go down here. I think that gets me forward. Oh, backwards, sorry. So what I want you to think about when you think about mind wandering is every time your mind wanders, or when you pass judgment and you're saying, oh, I'm no good at this, realize that that's part of the practice. You're exercising the muscles in your brain that are helping you to stay attending to whatever the thing it is you're meditating on, and you're getting the chance to practice non-judgment. Every time you hear yourself say, I'm no good at this, there's a judgment, there's another judgment. And sometimes you'll judge, oh, I judged again, I'm terrible, I'm even bad at non-judgment. Well, you'll get a lot of practice in doing the very things you need to learn most: paying attention, keeping your attention. And these are skills that can be strengthened through meditation, and that's what it's all about. So I'm going to skip the philosophy of mindfulness. That'll kind of take us another 10 minutes to really delve into. But one thing I did want to show you before we go is some of the things that you can do. You all have access to this web platform now. And I just wanted you to be aware of this, because there's a lot more you can learn about mindfulness. Let me pull up this. There's a mindfulness coach on here that you can click on. When you go here, Danica can, if you're not signed up to be using this, definitely contact her. And she can show you how to get signed up, and you'll have your own homepage. This is my homepage. You just click on this menu button, and that will take you to all these little icons where you can learn about cognitive restructuring, which is really sort of an aspect of mindfulness. There's programs on mindfulness here in, like I say, there's a mindfulness coach. There's in the video section, I think I must be covering up. That's what's happening. My pictures are covering things up. So in the video section, there's lots of information about mindfulness. So definitely check this out if you want to learn more about mindfulness. So that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say. Sorry, we kind of ran over, but I certainly was enjoying the whole program, and I hope you did too. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer whatever I can.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, Jim. These are great resources. I always say you're more likely to do what you've practiced. So thank you for the opportunity to practice together.